Imagine this. Patty Wilkins, the pastel cardigan saint of Willow Creek Estates, was screaming into her phone right in our driveway like the world was ending. "Officer, you need to do something. They're threatening me right now." Her voice sliced through the perfect Saturday silence like a chainsaw at a tea party. I stepped onto the porch with my wife Elena right behind me, just in time to see Patty waving that phone like it was Exhibit A in her personal persecution complex. "Patty, this is ridiculous," I said, keeping my voice level even though my blood was already boiling. "It's a $50,000 fine over one garage door panel. Nobody's threatening you." She spun around with that trademark sugar-coated smirk she saved for HOA meetings. "We'll see what the police think about your attitude, Alex." 8 minutes later a cruiser rolled up, lights painting our cookie-cutter lawns in patriotic red and blue. Officer Ramirez climbed out, looking ready for a domestic apocalypse. Patty practically dove into his arms. "Thank God you're here. These residents refuse to comply with legal HOA requirements." I feared for my safety. She pointed straight at us like we just robbed a bank. Ramirez turned toward Elena, ready to play good cop, and then everything froze. His eyes locked on her face. His spine snapped straight like someone yanked an invisible string. "Commander Vargas?" he blurted, voice cracking. "Ma'am, I didn't realize this was your residence." Patty's smug little smile melted faster than cheap ice cream in July. Her clipboard slipped from her manicured fingers and clattered onto the driveway like a dead bird. "What did you just call her?" she demanded, voice shooting up 3 octaves. Ramirez took one respectful step back. "Ma'am, she's my boss." The silence that dropped over Willow Creek Estates was so thick you could have spread it on toast. Neighbors peeked from behind perfectly trimmed hedges. A jogger actually stopped mid-stride and pretended to tie his shoe just to watch the show. Elena didn't flinch. She folded her arms, tone calm and professional. "Officer Ramirez, what exactly is the complaint here?" And right there on my own porch I realized Patty hadn't just stepped in dog poop. She'd stepped into a landmine of her own making. This wasn't about a garage door anymore. This was about exposure. My wife's secret rank, her authority, her entire identity laid bare in front of the woman who thought she owned the neighborhood. Patty had come for blood. Instead she just handed us the knife. But none of us knew yet how deep this rabbit hole of HOA insanity actually went. That $50,000 fine? Just the shiny bait on the trap. The real game, the lies, the cameras, the stolen identity was only beginning. When Elena and I first moved into Willow Creek Estates 6 months earlier, I genuinely thought we'd won the suburban lottery. Tree-lined streets where the willows whispered in the breeze. Lawns so green they looked photoshopped. Kids on bikes until the streetlights hummed on. Everyone waved like they'd practiced it in a mirror. After 15 years teaching restless teenagers about the Bill of Rights, I was starving for this kind of order. Predictability. A place where the biggest drama was whose turn it was to host the block party. And at the glittering center of it all stood Patty Wilkins. Everyone called her the guardian angel of Willow Creek. She organized canned food drives that looked like military operations. She judged holiday-like competitions with the seriousness of the Olympics. New families got homemade banana bread and a handwritten welcome card before their moving truck even left. Lose your dog? Patty had already printed flyers and posted them before you finished crying. Fence dispute? Patty mediated like she graduated from Harvard Law, with a minor in passive aggression. Patty keeps this place running like a Swiss watch, our handyman neighbor Marcus told me the first week, wiping grease off his hands. We'd be lost without her. First I believed every word. The very first HOA meeting we attended, Patty stood at the front of the community center in a pastel cardigan that probably cost more than my first car. Clipboard in one hand, smile glowing like a nuclear reactor. She spoke about safety patrols, charity initiatives, and preserving neighborhood harmony. People nodded. People clapped. People laughed at her lame jokes like she was the second coming of stand-up comedy. Elena leaned over and whispered in my ear, "She's good. Too good." I brushed it off. Figured my wife's cop instincts just made her suspicious of anyone who smiled that wide. Looking back, she was right from minute one. Nobody pours that much syrup on every single detail unless they're hiding something rotten underneath. One moment should have been my red flag with bells on. We'd only been there 3 weeks when Patty showed up on our doorstep with a casserole that smelled like guilt and manipulation. She chatted about neighborhood watch, about how safety is everyone's sacred duty. Then came the questions, casual, friendly, deadly. So Elena, what do you do again? Long hours. Alex, teaching history must be so rewarding. Do you work late grading papers? At the time it felt like friendly small talk. Later I realized she was building a file, cataloging our lives the way a predator catalogs prey. And Patty had a gift for inserting herself everywhere. Repainting shutters? She'd swing by with color swatches and gentle suggestions. New car in the driveway? Sweet ride. Did you file the proper parking paperwork? Kids' basketball hoop left out overnight? Next morning there'd be a printed copy of the regulation taped to your door like a parking ticket from hell. At first I admired the efficiency. Then I started wondering, who the hell carries laminated copies of every single rule in their purse just in case? Still, life felt comfortable. Too comfortable. Every Christmas Patty delivered hand-addressed cards to all 62 families. Every Easter she hosted an egg hunt with color-coded maps. Every summer the block party had live music, raffles, even a bouncy castle shaped like the American flag. She was everywhere, smiling, helping, watching. Looking back it was obvious, like a magician waving sparkly hands while the other one picked your pocket. But back then we were just grateful. Who wouldn't be? One night while walking our golden retriever Max past all those glowing porches, Elena said quietly, "Have you noticed how Patty always knows everything? Even things nobody should know." I laughed it off. She's just plugged in. Some people are like that. Elena gave me the look that usually meant I was about to learn something the hard way. No, Alex. Some people are nosy. Patty is compiling dossiers. At the time I didn't get the difference. Soon enough we would. Because behind the casseroles, the clipboards, and the perfect smile, something ugly was hiding. And it had been watching us closer than we ever imagined. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning looking like it had been printed by the IRS on steroids. Heavy cream paper, embossed HOA letterhead, and 8 glossy photographs of our garage door stapled together like a crime scene file. Elena was pouring coffee when I pulled it from the mailbox. We both just stared at the envelope like it might bite. "Open it," she said quietly. I tore it open. My eyes locked on the number at the bottom first, $50,000 in bold, angry font. I actually barked a laugh. This has to be a joke. Elena leaned in, scanning the legalese. Violation of Community Aesthetic Standards, Section 12B. Garage door panels not consistent with approved subdivision design. She looked up, brow furrowed. They're fining us $50,000 because one panel is 2 shades lighter than the neighbor's. I flipped through the photos, close-ups from every angle like the photographer had been stalking our house for days. "The door came with the damn house," I muttered. "Half the street has the exact same model." Elena sipped her coffee slowly, cop brain already in gear. "Look at the language, immediate payment, no exceptions, possible lien enforcement. Someone wants to squeeze us financially." I shoved the papers back in. Well, someone's about to get an earful. Nobody hits me with $50,000 without a fight. That evening I cornered Patty after her garden committee meeting in the community center. She was smiling, chatting with 2 little old ladies, clipboard glued to her hand as always. "Patty," I said, holding up the envelope. "What the hell is this?" Her smile never wavered. "Oh, Alex, you got your notice. Good. I know it looks deep, but rules are rules. Uniformity protects property values. We can't let one home drag the whole neighborhood down, can we?" $50,000, I said, voice rising despite myself. "For a garage door panel that was here when we bought the place." She tilted her head, fake sympathy dripping. "It's not personal, dear. Just enforcement. If we make exceptions, chaos follows. You wouldn't want to be responsible for that, would you?" Elena stepped up beside me, tone ice-cold steel. "Patty, I've read the ordinance. It's selectively enforced. 7 other houses have the exact same door. None of them got notices." For the first time Patty's smile twitched, just a flicker, before snapping back brighter than ever. "Well, I can't speak to other cases. Perhaps your property was flagged for extra review. Flagged. The word landed like a slap. Walking home under the streetlights, Elena's jaw was locked tight. She's targeting us. This isn't about aesthetics. It's leverage. I wanted to believe it was just HON nonsense. But the photos, the fine, the tone, it all felt too calculated. $50,000 isn't a fine. It's a weapon. Elena squeezed my hand. Then we treat it like one. And that's when I knew we weren't dealing with a nosy neighbor anymore. We just declared war on the Queen of Willow Creek Estates. Marcus showed up Thursday with his toolbox, whistling like nothing was wrong. He fixed our sticky gate in 10 minutes flat, then dropped the bomb while packing up. By the way, Patty asked me to keep an eye out for any property improvements when I'm doing rounds. You know, take notes so people don't get blindsided by fines. I froze mid thank you. Take notes. He shrugged like it was no big deal. Paint chipping, hedges too tall, that sort of thing. She said it helps with compliance. Compliance. The word tasted like poison. Elena had stepped onto the porch just in time. Her eyes narrowed to slits. Marcus, are you saying she asked you to spy on people's houses? He shifted uncomfortably. I wouldn't call it spying. More like preventive maintenance. Elena's voice sharpened. Did she ask you to focus on our house? Marcus gave a sheepish grin. Yeah. She said she was worried you two might get blindsided. Favor. My stomach flipped. This wasn't neighborly help. This was reconnaissance. When Marcus left, Elena and I stood in silence while the weight of it settled. She's been watching us, I said finally. That fine wasn't random. She's been waiting for anything she could use. Elena's jaw tightened. She's building a case file. That night I couldn't sleep. At 1 a.m., I grabbed a flashlight and measured every mailbox on our block, 13 total. 9 technically in violation. Only ours had been cited. I wrote the numbers down in the little notebook I used for lesson plans, hands shaking. Selective enforcement. Secret notes. Surveillance disguised as community spirit. We weren't paranoid. We were marked. It happened Friday afternoon. I just survived another day of teaching teenagers why the Constitution still matters when I fumbled my keys on the porch. They skittered behind Elena's potted ferns. I crouched down, reached behind the pots, and my fingers brushed something cold, metallic, professional. I froze. Slowly I pulled out a tiny black device no bigger than a quarter. Elen stared back at me, unblinking. Law enforcement grade. I sat down hard on the steps, heart hammering. When Elena got home, I was still turning it over in my hands like it might explode. She took one look and her face went dark. This is department issue, Alex. CSC 44. Only licensed agencies can buy these. She examined the serial number, the mounting bracket. Whoever planted this knows exactly what they're doing. My mouth went dry. They've been listening to us. Arguments. Phone calls. Everything. Elena's eyes hardened. This isn't about a garage door anymore. This is about me. She looked straight at me. Who here knows I'm a police commander? The question hit harder than the fine. The answer was supposed to be no one. That night Elena stayed up tracing purchase records while I stared at the ceiling. The house didn't feel like ours anymore. Felt like a stage. And Patty Wilkins had been sitting in the audience the whole time taking notes. The text came at 9:30 the next morning. Emergency HOA meeting tonight 7 p.m. Community Center. Critical safety concerns. Signed PW. Elena read it twice and muttered, "This isn't a meeting. It's an execution." We walked in expecting 20 people. Instead the room was packed. 40 families, folding chairs scraping, whispers flying. Patty stood at the front, clipboard clutched like a shield, smile glued on. "Thank you all for coming on short notice," she began, voice dripping practice concern. "I've received troubling reports about surveillance equipment discovered in our neighborhood. This raises serious privacy and safety issues." The words landed like a slap. She was flipping the script before we could speak. Elena's hand tightened around mine under the table. This wasn't a meeting. It was an ambush. Linda from 3 houses down stood up, voice trembling. If someone's planting cameras, how do we know our families are safe? Nods rippled. Marcus stood next, avoiding our eyes. Some residents seem to think they're above the rules. That causes problems for everyone. The choreography was perfect. Patty had rehearsed them. I stood up. The room went dead silent. If we're talking surveillance, I said evenly, pulling the camera from my pocket, let's talk about this. I held it high. Gasps. Whispers. Color drained from faces. Patty's mask cracked for half a second, pure fury, before she smoothed it back. I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation, she said tightly. Perhaps someone was concerned about break-ins. I met as many eyes as I could. How many of you think it's reasonable for someone to secretly record your family inside your own home? More shifting. More doubt. Patty clutched her clipboard tighter. I'm only trying to protect this community. If some people feel targeted, maybe they should ask themselves why. The poison was spreading again. But cracks were showing. As the meeting broke up, Patty slipped into the parking lot on her phone. My teacher ears caught the whisper. We need to accelerate the timeline. The camera was found too soon. How long before she figures out who I really am? Elena and I froze in the shadows. The woman everyone called the guardian angel wasn't just power-hungry. She was terrified. And terrified people do desperate things. The knock came like a gunshot. Elena looked up from her laptop. She's here. I opened the door and there stood Patty. No cookies, no smile, just pure venom. The fine must be paid today, she snapped, shoving a manila envelope into my chest. No exceptions. Elena stepped into view, voice calm steel. We've reviewed the ordinance, Patty. It's selectively enforced. We're filing a formal appeal. For a split second, Patty's mask vanished. Cold rage flashed. Then the brittle smile snapped back. You people don't understand. There are consequences for ignoring proper procedures. Elena squared her shoulders. Are you threatening us, Patty? Patty thumbed her phone with shaking fingers and raised it to her ear, voice suddenly trembling like a victim in a Lifetime movie. I need officers immediately. Residents are becoming aggressive about legitimate community enforcement. I fear for my safety. She hung up and gave us a triumphant sneer. We'll see about that. 8 minutes later the cruiser arrived. Patty launched into her Oscar-worthy performance before the officer even reached the porch. They're refusing to comply. They threatened me. Officer Ramirez turned toward Elena, and the script exploded. Commander Vargas, he blurted. Ma'am, is everything all right here? Patty's clipboard hit the porch again. She stumbled backward like she'd been slapped. Elena inclined her head politely. Hello, officer. What exactly is the complaint? Another cruiser pulled up. Officer Chun stepped out, saw Elena, and the same stunned salute happened. Commander, do you need backup? Radio chatter crackled. Dispatch, Commander Vargas is on scene. Patty flailed. I don't care what her job is. Rules apply to everyone. But the officers weren't buying it. Ma'am, this is a civil HOA matter. We don't enforce fines unless there's actual criminal activity. Patty's face twisted like she'd swallowed glass. For the first time she looked small. Pathetic. The officers left, but the damage was done. Word was spreading faster than suburban gossip at a block party. That night our phone wouldn't stop ringing. Colleagues calling Elena. Neighbors whispering. By morning the neighborhood had turned. People who used to wave now ducked inside. Conversations stopped when we walked by. The Hendersons forgot to invite us to their annual barbecue. Social death by HOA decree. Elena tried to hide the hurt, but I saw it. 15 years building an untouchable reputation, and Patty had painted her as the neighborhood threat in 48 hours. That's when my classroom instincts kicked in. I'd seen mob mentality before. If Patty wanted psychological warfare, she'd picked the wrong history teacher. I started knocking on doors with copies of the selective enforcement measurements, photos of the camera, transcripts of Patty's contradictions. Ask yourselves, I'd say quietly, does this look like protecting the community or hiding something? Marcus was the first to crack. 3 days later he showed up at my door, Notebook in hand, voice low. Alex, something's wrong. She had me logging Elena's schedule when she left, when she came home. I thought it was neighborly. Now I see it was surveillance. He handed me pages of dates and times. My stomach dropped. She's been building a file for months. That night Elena sat at the kitchen table, eyes blazing. This isn't gossip anymore. This is professional. Someone planted that camera. Someone's feeding her intel. She slid a tiny recorder across the table. We set the trap. You play the worried husband. Let her hang herself with her own words. We picked the Metro diner, neutral ground, noisy enough to hide the wire. I arrived early, palms sweating. When Detective Walsh walked in, Patty's concerned friend from the department, he looked every inch the polished cop. But his eyes had that hungry calculation. Heard you wanted to talk about Elena, he said, sliding into the booth. I forced a nervous laugh. This HOMS is destroying her. I don't know what to do. He leaned in, sympathetic smile too perfect. For 10 minutes I let him dig. Then he asked the question that sealed it. You mentioned surveillance equipment. What model camera was it? I answered exactly as Elena coached. CZ44. He nodded too knowingly. Expensive law enforcement grade. Has Elena considered someone in her own department might be behind it? My blood ran cold. That model had never been in any public report. There was only one way he could know. Got you. He kept going, dropping details about the meeting, about Patty's real concerns. Every word was gold on the recorder. When I got home, Elena listened with headphones, face darkening. He knew everything. He's dirty, and Patty's feeding him. The next morning, Captain Morrison summoned Walsh for a routine case review. When Walsh walked in, the recorder was already playing his own voice. He broke in under 30 minutes. She promised she'd make my gambling debts disappear. He sobbed. 73,000. All I had to do was feed her information on Commander Vargas. The mask was off. Patty wasn't just a HOA tyrant. She was something worse. By the time Elena laid it out that night, the pieces clicked into place like a horror movie finale. Patty Wilkins doesn't exist, she said quietly. Her real name is Detective Lisa Hargrove, Chicago PD. Vanished in 2020 after $347,000 disappeared from an evidence room. She's been running the same scam in 4 different states. Pose as the perfect HOA president, build trust, then bleed families dry with fines and fake projects. I gripped the table. The woman who'd brought us banana bread and organized egg hunts was a fugitive who'd turned neighborhoods into personal ATMs. The community center meeting the next night was standing room only. Elena stood at the front in uniform, voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Neighbors, we've all been deceived. The woman you know as Patty Wilkins is actually Lisa Hargrove, wanted for grand theft and fraud. The room went graveyard silent. Elena laid out the evidence, camera serial numbers, Walsh's confession, federal database hits. Marcus stepped forward with his notebook. Every note she asked me to take was about Elena's schedule. She wasn't protecting us. She was stalking her. Linda started crying. She told me you were spying on all of us. I believed her. The outrage was tidal. People demanded answers. But when 30 of us marched to Patty's house, the truth hit harder. The place was empty, erased. No furniture, no curtains, not even a speck of dust. Like the perfect neighbor had never existed. In the basement we found the steel file cabinet she'd left behind in her haste. Folders on every family. Photos through windows, bank statements, medical records. Systematic predation disguised as community spirit. The FBI arrived 6 hours later. Agent Torres looked at the files and whistled low. 4 communities. Millions stolen. You people are the first to catch her before she vanished again. But Lisa Hargrove wasn't done yet. That same night Linda's daughter pounded on our door sobbing. Mom went to get the FBI papers and never came back. Flashlights swept the dark. Marcus spotted movement at the abandoned community center. We found her there. Lisa holding Linda hostage, taser pressed to her ribs, same sweet smile now twisted into something demonic. Don't come closer, she called, or your precious neighbor gets the full treatment. FBI surrounded the building. Torres raised the bullhorn. Lisa, let her go. It's over. She laughed that honeyed laugh. You don't understand. I was protecting them from her. She pointed at Elena. 2 hours of negotiations. Then Marcus whispered the building layout to Torres. Sweat slipped through the old kitchen vent. Flashbang. Crash. Shouts. Linda rolled free. When the smoke cleared, Lisa was on her knees, hands cuffed, still trying to smile. We can work this out, she cooed. Just call my lawyer. The relief was electric. Neighbors hugged, cried, apologized. But as they marched her to the van, Lisa leaned toward Torres and whispered loud enough for us to hear. This was bigger than me. And now they'll come for all of you. 8 months later, in a packed Chicago federal courtroom, the verdict landed like a gavel to the soul. Guilty on 22 counts. 22 years, no parole, full restitution. The judge's words still echo. You didn't just steal money. You poisoned trust itself. Marcus now runs a real neighborhood watch that actually helps people. Linda was elected HOA president on a transparency ticket. Every decision voted on by the whole community. Our crooked mailbox still stands 2 inches too tall with a little plaque. In memory of trust restored. Elena got a commendation and a promotion. Me? I teach my students that history isn't just wars and laws. It's also about ordinary people spotting monsters wearing cardigans and refusing to look away. Yet sometimes, late at night when the street is quiet and the wind rattles our mailbox, I remember Lisa's last whisper. Maybe it was a bluff. Maybe just another lie. But every once in a while I catch myself wondering who else is still out there. Clipboard in hand, smiling that perfect smile? So tell me, when the HOA president shows up with cookies and a fine, who's really the villain? The one who breaks the rules or the one who writes them? The next morning the neighborhood felt different. People who used to wave from their porches now suddenly remembered urgent errands. Conversations at the park died the second we approached. The Hendersons forgot to invite us to their annual Labor Day cookout. Social death by text message. Elena tried to brush it off. I've faced worse in uniform. But I saw the tightness around her eyes. 15 years climbing the ranks on merit, and one Karen with a clipboard had painted her as the neighborhood tyrant in under 48 hours. That's when my old substitute teacher survival instincts kicked into overdrive. I'd watched students manufacture outrage to overthrow classroom authority plenty of times. Same tactics, different playground. If Patty wanted psychological warfare, she'd pick the wrong guy who grades essays for a living. I started knocking on doors, not aggressive, just factual. I carried printed copies of the selective mailbox measurements, time-stamped photos of the camera we'd found, and transcripts of Patty's ever-changing stories. Ask yourselves, I'd say in the same calm voice I used during parent-teacher conferences, does this look like a leader protecting the community or someone terrified of losing control? Some neighbors slammed doors. Others listened. Marcus was the first to switch sides. 3 days after the police fiasco, he showed up at dusk, notebook in hand, voice barely above a whisper. Alex, I can't sleep. She had me logging Elena's schedule. Exact time she left for work, when she came home, even which car she drove. I thought it was innocent neighbor stuff. Now I see it was straight-up surveillance. He flipped open the pages. Dates, times, license plates, all focused on us. My stomach tightened. She was building a case file for months. That night Elena spread the evidence across our kitchen table like battle maps. Her eyes had that focused predator gleam I'd only seen when she was closing in on a dirty cop. This isn't neighborhood gossip anymore, she said quietly. This is professional-grade takedown. Someone planted that camera. Someone's feeding her real-time intel from inside the department. She slid a tiny digital recorder across the table, the kind her unit uses for undercover buys. We set the trap tonight. You play the worried husband who just wants his wife to be okay. Let her hang herself with her own words. We picked the Metro diner on the edge of town. Neutral ground, noisy enough that background chatter would mask the wire. I arrived early, palms sweating, rehearsing my lines like it was opening night of a school play. When Detective Walsh walked in, Patty's concerned friend from the department, he looked every inch the polished cop. Pressed shirt, confident stride. But his eyes had that hungry calculation you see in people who've already sold their soul. "Heard you wanted to talk about Elena," he said, sliding into the booth like we were old buddies. I forced a nervous laugh. This whole HOA nightmare is tearing her apart. I don't know what to do anymore. He leaned in, sympathy dialed to 11. For the first 10 minutes I let him lead, questions about stress, about her long hours, about whether she brought work home. I played the clueless husband perfectly. Then his questions sharpened. "You mentioned surveillance equipment. What model camera exactly?" I answered exactly as Elena had coached. "'Tis 44. He nodded too knowingly. "Expensive law enforcement grade. Has Elena considered someone in her own department might be behind it?" My blood turned to ice. That model number had never been released in any report. There was only one way he could know it. "Gotcha." He kept digging, dropping details about the emergency meeting, about Patty's real concerns, about activist groups who don't like cops in their neighborhoods. Every word was pure gold on the recorder, burning against my skin. When I got home, Elena listened with headphones, face growing darker with every sentence. She paused the playback. He knew the model. He knew details of the meeting that were never public. He knew my schedule down to the minute. She pulled the headphones off, eyes blazing. "He's not just dirty, Alex. He's being fed information by someone who's been watching us for months." "Patty," I said. Elena nodded grimly. "Tomorrow I take this straight to Captain Morrison. Internal Affairs is going to love this." The confrontation was surgical. Morrison summoned Walsh under the pretense of a routine case review. When Walsh strolled into the office, he found Morrison, an internal affairs investigator, and the recorder already playing his own voice back at him. Elena described it later. How Walsh's confident swagger collapsed in under 30 seconds. How his hands started shaking before he dropped his head into them and started talking. "She promised she'd make the gambling debts disappear," he sobbed. $73,000. All I had to do was feed her information on Commander Vargas, schedule, cases, anything. The mask was gone. Patty wasn't just a power-tripping HOA president. She was running a sophisticated operation with insiders on the payroll. By the time Elena laid the full picture out that night, the pieces locked together like the final click of a horror movie lock. "Patty Wilkins doesn't exist," she said, voice steady but cold. "Her real name is Detective Lisa Hargrove, formerly Chicago PD. She vanished in 2020 right after $347,000 disappeared from an evidence room. She's been running the exact same scam in 4 different states. Pose as the perfect HOA angel, build trust with cookies and block parties, then bleed families dry with fines and fake improvement projects." I gripped the edge of the table so hard my knuckles went white. The woman who'd organized our Easter egg hunt and brought us banana bread was a fugitive who'd turned entire neighborhoods into personal cash machines. The emergency community center meeting the following night was standing room only. Folding chairs scraped. The air buzzed with nervous energy. Elena stood at the front in full uniform, expression carved from stone. "Neighbors," she began, voice cutting through the murmurs like a blade. "We've all been deceived." She laid it out piece by piece, the camera serial numbers matching department records, Walsh's taped confession, federal database hits confirming Lisa Hargrove's wanted status. Marcus stepped forward holding his worn spiral notebook like it was Exhibit A. Every single note she asked me to take was about Elena's schedule. She wasn't protecting the community. She was stalking her. Linda started crying openly. "She told me you were spying on all of us." I believed her. I helped spread it. The outrage that swept the room was tidal. People demanded answers. People demanded Patty's head. But when 30 of us marched down the street to her house, the truth hit harder than any revelation. The place was empty, completely erased. No furniture, no curtains, not even a coffee cup left behind. It looked less like a house and more like a stage set that had been struck overnight. In the basement we found the single steel file cabinet she'd been forced to abandon. Drawers hanging open, folders scattered. Each one labeled with a family name, Johnson Morales Patterson, filled with surveillance photos taken through windows, bank statements, even medical records. Not just Willow Creek. Cedar Rapids. Normal. Springfield. Systematic, professional predation disguised as friendly neighborhood watch. The FBI rolled in 6 hours after Elena's call. Agent Torres stood in Lisa's barren living room and actually whistled. 4 communities in 4 years. Millions stolen. You folks are the first to expose her before she could finish the cycle and disappear again. But Lisa Hargrove wasn't finished yet. That same night, Linda's daughter hammered on our door, face streaked with tears. Mom went to drop off the FBI paperwork and never came back. Flashlights swept the darkness. Marcus spotted movement near the abandoned community center. The one boarded up for renovations. We found her there. Lisa holding Linda hostage in the main hall. Taser pressed tight to her ribs, that same sweet smile now twisted into something demonic. "Don't come any closer," she called out, voice still honey-sweet. "Or your precious neighbor gets the full treatment." FBI surrounded the building in minutes. Lights flashing, radios crackling. Agent Torres raised the bullhorn. "Lisa Cooper Hargrove. Whatever you want to call yourself, you're surrounded. Let Linda go and nobody gets hurt." Lisa laughed, that same laugh she'd used for 4 years at block parties. "You still don't understand. I was protecting them from her." She pointed straight at Elena. "Your Commander Vargas has been abusing her authority, spying on families. I was the only one brave enough to stand up." 2 hours of negotiations dragged by. Tension thick enough to choke on. Then Marcus leaned close to Torres. "I know this building inside out. There's a service corridor through the old kitchen that comes out right behind her. Vent systems big enough for a man." Torres gave the silent signal. Sweat moved like ghosts. Flashbang. Crash of a side door. Shouts. Linda rolled free just as white light flooded the hall. When the smoke cleared, Lisa was on her knees, hands cuffed behind her, still trying to smile like nothing had happened. "We can work this out," she cooed to the agents. "Just call my lawyer. I have connections." The relief that swept through the crowd was tidal. Neighbors wept, hugged, apologized to us through tears. But as they marched Lisa to the waiting van, she leaned toward Agent Torres and whispered loud enough for the front row to hear. "This was bigger than me. And now they'll come for all of you." 8 months later, I found myself sitting in a wood-paneled federal courtroom in downtown Chicago. The kind of place where history presses down from the ceiling. Rows of benches packed with victims from 4 different states. Families from Springfield, Cedar Rapids, Normal, and our own Willow Creek estates. I held Elena's hand as the bailiff called the case. United States versus Lisa Hargrove. She walked in flanked by marshals, tailored suit, hair perfect, that same calm smile. But her eyes darted. When she glanced at the gallery, some of our old neighbors actually gasped. For years she'd been their guardian angel. Now she was the mastermind of one of the most sophisticated community fraud schemes the FBI had ever cracked. The prosecution unfolded like a masterclass in deception. Agent Torres presented charts tracing Lisa's movements across 4 states. How she'd build trust with small kindnesses, introduce fear through selective enforcement, then offer solutions that always cost money. The numbers were staggering. $2.1 million stolen, over 300 families manipulated, 1 police evidence room looted, and 1 hostage situation that almost ended in tragedy. Marcus took the stand next, nervous in his borrowed suit but steady. He described how Lisa had instructed him to log Elena's every move. "I thought it was neighborly concern," he said, voice cracking only once. "Now I see it was stalking." Linda's testimony broke the room. She spoke about being coached to spread rumors, about the shame of realizing she'd helped attack innocent neighbors, about the terror of feeling that taser against her ribs. "Her kindness was never kindness," she said, voice thick. "It was a leash." Walsh followed, shoulders slumped, badge long gone. He cried openly as he admitted leaking information in exchange for help with his gambling debts. "I thought I was in control," he whispered. "She was in control the whole time." Lisa's defense tried everything: victim of circumstance, foster care survivor, even claiming her community projects had left neighborhoods safer. The jury didn't buy a single word. When Lisa herself took the stand, she almost pulled it off for 30 seconds. Soft voice, tales of lonely nights carrying burdens no one else could understand. Then the mask slipped. These people lived boring, predictable lives, she said, tone sharpening. They needed me. They wanted drama. They wanted someone to give them purpose. If they were too blind to see that, it's not my crime. It's their weakness. Gasps rippled. The jury's faces hardened like concrete. The verdict landed like a sledgehammer. Guilty on 22 federal counts. The judge's sentencing words still ring in my ears. Ms. Hargrove, your crimes went beyond theft. You poisoned trust itself. You taught entire neighborhoods to doubt their neighbors and their own judgment. That corrosion is more dangerous than any dollar amount. 22 years in federal prison. No parole. Full restitution of $2.1 million. Her composure finally cracked. For the first time I saw real panic in those calculating eyes. The trial didn't just end Lisa's reign. Changed policy. Within a year, Congress passed the Community Protection Act requiring background checks and accountability standards for every HOA board in the country. Her case now appears in law enforcement training manuals and college courses on social psychology. Back in Willow Creek, healing happened slowly but surely. Linda was elected HOA president on a platform of radical transparency. Every decision now goes to full community vote. Marcus runs a genuine neighborhood watch that actually helps the elderly with repairs instead of spying. Mrs. Patterson started a support group for victims of manipulative authority figures that quickly grew to include families from the other 3 towns Lisa had ruined. Our old garage door still has that one lighter panel. We left it that way on purpose. A little plaque underneath reads, "In memory of trust restored." Elena received a commendation from the FBI and a promotion to head the new Community Liaison Division. For her, justice was never just about arrests. It was about rebuilding the bridge between police and the people they serve. As for me, the lesson seeped into every single class I teach. I tell my students that history isn't only wars and politicians. It's also about ordinary people who spot the monster wearing the perfect smile and have the courage to pull the mask off together. Yet even now, late at night when the street is perfectly quiet and the wind rattles our slightly crooked mailbox, I sometimes remember Lisa's last whisper as they dragged her away. This was bigger than me. And now they'll come for all of you. Maybe it was a bluff. Maybe just one final manipulation from a woman who couldn't stop lying even when the game was over. But every once in a while I catch myself checking the porch ferns for tiny black lenses. And I wonder how many other Patties are still out there right now, clipboard in hand, baking cookies and writing fines, waiting for the next perfect neighborhood to devour? So here's the question I want you to answer honestly in the comments. When the HOA president shows up smiling with cookies in one hand and a $50,000 fine in the other, who's really the villain? The homeowner who dares to have the wrong shade of garage door, or the smiling neighbor who wrote the rulebook and will destroy anyone who questions it? Because after everything we went through, I'm still not sure the answer is as simple as it looks. What do you think? Who was really in the wrong all along?